Hi, this is Mary from the Daily Sew. I've been sewing for 40 plus years. Lots of years of mistakes, successes, and detours, and I've learned a lot of techniques. I've learned how to look at projects, I've learned how to approach problems, and I've learned what my sewing preferences are. I started sewing alongside my mom and eventually got serious about sewing, so I pursued a major in fashion design, where I really did learn how to sew. Maybe more so than learning how to design. The idea for this video was a blog post titled 11 Things I Learned About Sewing that I published in 2015. I've updated it a bit, and today I'm sharing 12 things I've learned and that I practice and that I highly recommend when it comes to sewing. So if you're ready, let's go. So number one is hand basting. When you take the time to hand baste, you actually save time. When you hand baste a seam together or you hand baste something down in place, it's pretty much guaranteed it's not going to move before you get to the machine or when you're sewing it down. This is especially true if you use a tailor basting stitch. Your stripes are going to stay lined up with each other, your slippery fabric isn't going to slip, and everything's going to stay exactly where you need it to be. No sewing over pins necessary. Sometimes it's faster to put a zipper in by hand, especially if it is a centered zipper going up the center back or center front of a garment. Someplace where it's really prominent, you want your stitches on either side of the zipper to be even and pretty much perfect. And when I sew a zipper in by machine, there's always a little bit, some little section that has to be taken out and re-sewn. And when you re-sew it, you gotta line up the stitches so it's not so obvious that you've lined it back up. They're not doubling on each other. So I find it a lot faster to just baste the zipper in by hand and then sew it in by hand with a prick stitch. A prick stitch is a type of back stitch. It has really teeny tiny stitches on the outside, but the inside is still strong like a back stitch, which the strain that a zipper puts on the garment, that is exactly what you need. So much faster. You have a lot more control over where the stitches go and you don't see it. Number three, a buttonhole. The buttonhole my machine makes is sort of wimpy looking. So I just sew it twice. I sew it once, and then before I even lift the presser foot, I just go back over it. Sew it twice. It's a much stronger buttonhole and it looks a lot better. Now, if you have a new machine, say from the last 10 years or so, or maybe you have a fancy machine, your buttonhole that you do the first time around may look awesome and lucky you. But if your buttonhole is a little sparse looking, just sew it twice. So much easier, looks much better. Speaking of buttonholes, don't open the buttonhole with a seam ripper. I did that for years until I ripped it and passed the little bar stitches at the end and into the garment. Yikes. Use a buttonhole cutter, very pointy, sharp little scissors that you can get in there, or place a straight pin at the end, the short ends of the buttonhole, both ends, and then when you use a seam ripper to rip it open, the seam ripper can't get past the straight pin. It's stopped and it saves your garment. Number five, seam rippers. Never use a seam ripper that doesn't fit your hand or is awkward to hold, because a seam ripper, like knives, can cause damage to you and any cloth that you're working with. And if you use your seam ripper often, or even if you don't, you should consider replacing it every few years or so, because you don't want to use a dull seam ripper. That's when the damage really happens, when you're pushing hard to rip something out. Okay, number six, quality thread. Quality thread is worth the cost, I promise. It doesn't cause the kind of trouble that cheap thread causes. It doesn't tangle constantly, it doesn't break in the machine, it doesn't fray to pieces and disintegrate when you're hand sewing, and your stitches look nice. Now, how do you know if your thread is quality? Well, it's not on a styrofoam spool, it wasn't sold in a big bin, and it wasn't 5 for $1. Now, quality thread, as do other fibers as they age, they do weaken and will be more prone to breakage. If you notice that your thread is breaking and you know it's a quality brand, maybe try a new spool and see if that's the problem. If it's still breaking and you're actually sewing by machine, it's probably that your sewing needle needs to be replaced. Number seven, don't take the pattern size chart personally. Pattern sizes are all over the place. It can be very frustrating. So much so, I made a whole video about that. If I make a pattern and I base it on the pattern's envelope, the sizes that they say, I still have to make adjustments to the garment in order to fit me. So I've learned to take my body measurements accurately and honestly, and then I measure the flat pattern and I pick a size from there. And I still had to make some pattern adjustments to the garment. Number 8, muslin. So making a muslin or a test garment is never exciting. I never look forward to it, and it barely even feels like progress. But it is part of the process if I want a successful finished garment. And I used to believe, as many people still do, of a wearable muslin. So, is it wearable like a garment, or is it a muslin? It can't be both. A muslin, you want to draw the grain line on it in order to see if it's balanced, if it's fitting, if it's not pulling, everything is on grain and looks good. You want to base the seams so that you can save time and change them quickly should they need to be changed. And you want wide unfinished seam allowances in order to facilitate any fitting adjustments that you need to do. See, a muslin is a test, not a garment. And you do have to make one, or a partial one, I'm sorry to tell you this, but this way you can figure out the fit exactly, and you can learn any new construction techniques, should they be new to you. You can get them worked out before you cut into your good, expensive fabric. Take notes. Write on your pattern envelope, your instruction sheet, wherever, with the pattern, write down anything that you want to do differently next time. Some people write in books, some people don't, and I've learned over the years to definitely write on my patterns. I write down what I'm going to do differently next time. I'm going to write down what size I sewed. I'm going to write down what fabric I sewed it out of, and that way I can remember the garment better and know that after I've worn it a few times or even a few years that, hey, next time I make that, I'm going to bring the shoulder seam forward or whatever it is I want to do differently. So we all think we're going to remember, but we don't. So write it down. Number 10, never sew when you're tired or rushed. That's just asking for trouble. That's when I make the most mistakes and some of the biggest mistakes. I sew because I like to sew. And if something's going to take me a little bit more time to get it finished, then so be it. No one's going naked if I don't get this done. And rushing only gets me a little bit further, but a lot more stressed. So my motto is, enjoy it or don't do it. Number 11. This is one of my favorites. Just say no to all those people you barely know who ask you to replace their broken zipper or hem their pants. This is a favor for people you care about, or maybe you owe them something. Have the name of a professional alterations place in your contacts, so when that person who barely speaks to you otherwise says, hey, can you alter my daughter's prom dress? You can say, shame, I can't, but here's somebody who can. Sewing always takes more time than you think, and you're going to rightfully deserve more money than they want to pay you. There's going to be resentment. So just say no, give them the name of somebody who can, and take that time to replace your own broken zipper or bake cookies. And what I would say is the biggest lesson I've learned, and one that I try to pass on to all my students, is number 12, trust yourself and what you know. You learn something from every project that you sew, even the ones that don't work out or that you don't finish. You know stuff. And sometimes you have to take a chance and it doesn't work out. And while that can be frustrating, you did learn from it, and that'll carry on to your next project. Also, sometimes when you're not really sure about how a different construction technique is done, maybe it's new to you or it's a little confusing, first slow down, take a breath, and then you can take scrap fabric, cut it into roughly the shapes, it doesn't have to be precise, on a smaller scale, the shapes that you need, and kind of pin them together to see how that technique works. I found that these miniatures, as my friend calls them, they really can help you visualize how something's done. Makes it a lot easier when you go to the machine to do it. Also, you might know a better technique than the pattern instructions give you. It might be a better technique that gives you a better result, or it might be a better way of doing that technique that you prefer to do. You can take instructions from all different patterns and put them together for the one thing that you're making, because you know stuff. You got this. Well, that's my list. Obviously, I still have more to learn. I still make mistakes, new and repeated, and I'm really trying to learn from them instead of just getting mad, which I'm really good at. Currently, I'm trying to learn my cover stitch machine. I find it a bit frustrating, but I know if I just take the time to learn it, it's going to be so useful, and I'll be so glad I did. Actually, this is my current recurring lesson. I'm always jumping into the sewing and not taking the time to get the prep work done. I'm still learning. Please wish me luck. What lessons have you learned? Put them in the comments below, because we all want to learn from you. Thank you so much for watching. Hope this video was helpful. Goodbye.